everyone, and welcome to tonight's special edition of Law and Disorder. My name is Joe Croce, and I'll be your host tonight, filling in for Vinnie Parco. My co-host this evening, you all know well, the brilliant Courtenay Turner. She has her own podcast, which I've listened to on many occasions, and I've been very impressed. Now, so often on this show, we share our mostly conservative, slightly right-leaning viewpoints, but we rarely get an intelligent liberal to give us an opposing viewpoint. And I'm not saying we have one tonight, an intelligent liberal, but we do have a liberal. Just kidding, Vinny. Our special guest this evening will be Mr. Vincenzo Bottone. Vinny is here on loan to us from London, England, and I'm very pleased he agreed to come on the show. Maybe Vinny can help us see how the other side thinks for a change. So with that said, tonight we will be discussing one of my favorite topics, the left's double standard in all matters, always. On a similar note, we'll segue into the current pro-abortion protests that are taking place outside the judges' homes as we speak. And then we'll get into how other countries view us right now and get an opinion or two from Mr. Bottone. Courtenay, what are you thinking today? How are you doing, Courtenay?
I'm doing well, thanks. But yeah, what am I thinking today about the double standards in particular?
Yeah, so I was watching, and I'll be brief about this, but I was watching the news, and I tend to, obviously I'm going to confess that I listen to Fox News more often than not. I listen to One America News. I listen to the conservative stations more than I don't. But I feel that, if you ever read the Chinese book, I forget the name of it right now. Know thy enemy.
Sun Tzu.
So I listen to
The Art of War.
Yes, Art of War. Thank you. I'm sorry. So I try to listen to CNN and MSNBC and NBC. Not a single one of them, and including the White House, nobody has condemned the protests outside, which are bordering, in my opinion, harassment. Severe harassment. And there are federal laws in place that specifically state that you cannot protest in front of a judge or elected officials' residence or in a place occupied by them in an effort to influence their decisions, to harass people. And they're doing that, not the president, not Jen Psaki, not MSNBC, not CNN, not a single news organization except the ones I mentioned earlier are willing to say anything about it.
Yeah. What
do you do?
It's a total double standard, but I'm not really all that surprised by it at all. We saw what happened, with BLM and with the riots, and that was perfectly fine. That was a peaceful protest, even though they were, destroying businesses, burning things down, but it was a peaceful protest, nothing to see. And then they called January 6th a violent armed insurrection. I'd like to know what they were armed with. To me, it looked like
worse than 9/11. Right, worse than 9/11.
Worse than 9/11. They were armed with cell phones, as far as I could see, but they claimed they were armed. So I guess that, they were armed with cell phones, and it was basically a scenic tour where they moved the velvet ropes. It looked like they were walking into a club. They opened the ropes for them, and they took out their phones and they took pictures. But that was an armed insurrection. So
and they were guilty. They were guilty of trespassing, and they broke the law.
No, it's not trespassing if they are let in. It is not trespassing. Absolutely not.
Oh, that's right. There were certain videos of police officers walking these people in. I mean, this is all news. You guys all know, we spoke about it on many earlier shows. I was there. I was there on January 6th with my wife and 2 busloads of people, but we never got anywhere near the Capitol. We were 500 yards away from the building. Are you listening, FBI? We weren't in the building, but So
anybody who is I was still listening to Trump speak, like at the Ellipse. Yeah.
No, and the funny part is when I heard about all that on the news, and I was there, and I heard the man perfectly clearly say, peacefully, patriotically, make your voices heard. I didn't hear it on Fox News. I was there. So but so Courtenay, my question to you before we get Vinny on is what do you do about it? We're witnessing this every day.
Yeah.
Every day we're seeing this, the double standard where, and I again, they accuse us of the what if isms, right? The what if isms. That's the
Really?
only
That was
ammunition they have against us conservatives is stop using what if isms. But what if this was Donald Trump or one of his family members or any of this that were having this stance on the protest house? We would be crucified.
Of course.
So with that in mind, what do we do? What do we do? What's our options here? Other than violence and rebellion, what do we do?
I don't think it needs to be violence or rebellion. I think what it needs to be is a complete uprising of citizen journalism. I think people need to be, because the mainstream media is not reporting it. The mainstream media is not going to report it. The mainstream media is the CIA. They're not going to report it. They want to report whatever narrative serves, their teleological ends. So, and that does not. So they're not going to report it. But I think that we could have, the people who know what's happening need to be speaking up and speaking out as much as they possibly can. And, even though there is rampant censorship, they can't censor everyone. So more people need to be talking about it, and they need to be, speaking out against it. I mean, you would, and they need to be putting pressure onto, the departments that should be doing something about it. The law enforcement, the DOJ.
I think that, and again, I wanted to really talk about this. I wanted to almost start my own show just to talk about this one subject. Okay. But I think that the sanctity of the vote and the integrity of the American vote must be preserved at all costs.
Well, it needs to be restored. I mean, I would argue that we haven't had election integrity, certainly not at the federal level, for a very, very, very long time. I would argue, honestly, over a century. And certainly this past election, it was of a great magnitude that couldn't be hidden anymore. They couldn't cover it up. But I don't think that this is the first time by a lot.
Well, they managed to. They got away with it because obviously
they got away with
Biden
it.
is the president, and
right.
We're all lunatic conspiracy theorists.
Getting away with something is not the same thing as being able to cover it up. Now it was in question, whereas for I would say over a century, people really haven't questioned it very much, and it's been going on. So. Okay. Yeah. So
I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe I'm not versed enough or knowledgeable enough to agree with that, but I would have to say that if we can't.
Did you watch 2000 Mules?
You took the words right out of my mouth. No, I haven't. I started researching it earlier today. Yeah. Dinesh Souza, whatever his name is.
I actually moderated a panel with him. He was one of 4 panelists, and I was the moderator in 2014 in DC for the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's awesome.
Now, I've heard him speak on the news many times.
He's brilliant.
I do not see him as a right-wing conspiracy theorist. He's well-grounded. He's well-spoken. He seems to have his act together. So
there's nothing wrong with conspiracy theorists, by the way.
But he seems okay. But you know what? When you go off the deep end and you get a little too far, then people can't swallow it. So I kind of figure, like, even if you believe that some of these crazy theories are real, you have to feed it to people in such a slow way that they can accept it. You can't just dump this on people because they immediately dismiss you like a tinfoil hat alien.
Well, first of all, foil hasn't been made out of tin since World War II, so I don't know where that term comes from.
You know what I meant? Aluminum foil, fine.
Yeah, aluminum foil.
But Dinesh seems to be very reasonable.
Yeah, and the term conspiracy theorist was literally weaponized by the CIA in 1967. It was a document, 1035-960, and it was a document to avert any investigation into the Warren Commission. So I really think we need to stop playing into their language, into their narratives, and into their paradigms. They want us to weaponize the term. There are conspiracies. Conspiracies exist. They can only survive in the dark. Therefore, it's incumbent upon light to shine on conspiracy and expose it. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with being conspiracy theorists. Now, if you have a theory, I think it is integral and important to specify that it's a theory, it is not proven fact, and then provide your evidence and your line of thought as to how you came to that conjecture. But if you have a conspiracy that you are aware of and you have evidence to support it, you should bring that to light as well. That's not the same
Right.
thing as conspiracy theory.
And then leave it to the opponent to debunk your theory.
Absolutely.
I got you. I would like to bring Vinny on
Sorry.
and see what he has to say about all this. But before that, I think and again, forgive me, folks. I've only this is my first time hosting or co-hosting the show with Courtney.
You're doing a great job, I think.
I'm not sure how to do the whole sponsor thing, and I know Vinny's got some sponsors. A special shout out to Vinny Parco tonight, who couldn't be with us. Mark Turner Insurance is one of our sponsors. They're located on 36 Richmond Terrace Suite in Staten Island, New York. There's their card on the screen. And Patsy's Pizzeria on Utopia Parkway in Whitestone, New York. They're one of the sponsors for the show too. Please show these folks your patronage. And I'm sure if Vinny's got them on the show, he's eating there, and they're a great pizzeria. So but in any way, let's bring Vincent Bottone on the show from England. He's our guest liberal tonight. How you doing, Vinny?
Good evening, America. Pleased to be here.
What do you think?
So, Vinny, you were listening to Courtney and I rant on a little bit. What do you think about, and regardless, and I'm going to let you speak and get your opinion on everything here, so I'm not going to cut you off, but we're going to do this a little bit piece at a time so that we get everybody's perspective on what we're talking about. So regardless of your views on abortion, okay, we have protesters right now, pro-abortion protesters that have, I would say, in my opinion, invaded the privacy of the federal judges at their homes. So we had a leak. We had about a week ago, we had a leak of a judge's opinion that Roe versus Wade, a bad decision, in my opinion, by the way, many years ago, and I think it was 1972 or 1973, that pretty much stated that a woman's right to an abortion was guaranteed by the Constitution. Upon review, and this is just a brief overview of what is happening here in the courts, a brief overview, is that Judge Alito, Sam Alito, a federal judge appointed for life, right? He made a decision, a brief, which is an opinion. This is not law. It is not decided by the other judges yet, but he gave an opinion after reviewing the court case, Roe versus Wade, that, and I'm going to try to boil this down so I don't take 20 minutes explaining it, but he basically said, Courtney, you could jump in when you think I'm wrong.
1973, I'll just say that really quickly. Yeah.
He basically said, this is not for the federal court to decide. This is out of our jurisdiction. In his opinion as a judge and a lawyer, the Constitution does not guarantee a woman the right to an abortion. It's not named. The word abortion is not used. They tried to infer it by the 14th Amendment, and they twisted it around in Roe versus Wade. It didn't really work out, but for the last 49 years, it's pretty much been that's the accepted among liberals and pro-abortion people. So basically now his opinion was leaked, and
it's unprecedented, by the way. It has never been a Supreme Court case or draft that has ever leaked in the history of the United States. And it is very intentional that their drafts and their initial decisions are done in private. And the reason for that is so that they are not influenced by public opinion. So this is a very big deal, the fact that it was leaked. And I personally do think it was intentional.
Right. So now you have all these people protesting outside the judges' houses. And this past weekend on Sunday, they invaded Catholic churches and Christian churches, and they put on the handmaidens costumes. And they basically, as far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of idiots that should be arrested. But peaceful protest, I get it. but this to me is a crime and these people should be punished. What's your opinion on this?
Well, I've got two opinions, really. First of all, I think from what I can gather, the system in America, how things are re-abortion, is fine. It's been working, you know. There's not a problem with it now. I don't think it's pretty much the same laws and rules as my little bit of research I've done as it is in the UK. And secondly, I think, you know, at the end of the day, whatever circumstances there are, it's the woman's decision. It's the woman that carries the baby. It's her that has to deal with the life. Who is it for a man in a court to decide what happens to a woman who he's never met that she does with her child or unborn child?
I know you can't help it, but that wasn't the question. You're a liberal, so I'm going to give you some slack tonight.
We'll
move to the abortion issue next. Don't worry, we'll get there. I'm sure Courtney's going to take that right to the bank for us. But my question is the protesting in front of a judge's house, the harassment of Catholic people in their place of worship. I'm talking about the law. This is the law. You're breaking the law. There's no excuse for it. And not Biden and nobody, not a single politician on the Democrat side. Okay, we got some Republicans that have complained. Nobody has said this is illegal and these people should be arrested. I want to know your opinion on the protests in front of a judge's house and inside a Catholic church.
Well, you know, I was brought up a Catholic, so obviously I'm agnostic now, so I don't agree with that. But I just feel that it's a very strong topic, isn't it? And people feel very strongly about it. Again, I'm not going to be popular. I'm not going to be popular with Courtney, but I don't. It's politicizing it. Is I know I'm not answering a question, but it's getting so far away from what people are talking about. How can you bring politics into life and death? You know, it's a separate situation. It's a separate situation. I know people have died. You know, the way you looked at me there, Courtney. I know most wars have been through because of politics. I did war studies, and war is politics with violence. So I said the wrong thing. I'll eat my words. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like, we're talking about unborn children. You know, I'm afraid I know I'm not answering the question, but how you can politicize it is beyond me. It's a question of integrity. It's not a question of politics. And Courtney, you wanted to say something to me when I spoke earlier. I'd like to know what you said.
I did, and I will get to that. But before I get to that, I first want to say, well, this isn't a matter of politics. I agree with you on that. It should not be political. This was a Supreme Court adjudication of a constitution, a ruling, and whether or not it was constitutionally sound. And the draft rules that it is not constitutional. And that is accurate, because regardless, we will get to your feelings and your thoughts on the abortion issue. And I have lots of questions for you and things to say on that. But that aside, whether you are pro-abortion or pro-life is actually irrelevant, because in the United States, we have a constitution. And the Constitution, there is the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which is federalism. And it stipulates that there are states' rights. And actually, the end of that sentence, it's a very brief, you know, like one-line paragraph, basically. And at the end of it, it actually says, or to the people, which people often leave out. People don't seem to read that part. So the problem, and this is what was adjudicated, is that Roe v. Wade was unconstitutional because it should never have been a federal issue. It is not within the purview of the federal government to dictate whether or not a woman can have or can't have an abortion. And so therefore it defers to the states. That's what this draft basically adjudicated. So it's not political. You're right. It's not about whether the Republicans or the Democrats or even, you know, political philosophy, the conservatives, the liberals, the libertarians, the whatevers. It is not about that at all. It's not political. This is a ruling and adjudication of the Constitution, whether or not this was constitutionally sound. And that is what they determined. So the question that I had for you, though, you had said that, a man should not be involved in this decision. So is a baby not?
No. I didn't mean a man that was connected to the baby. I meant a man who sits, who makes a judgment, who is going to, like you're saying, that this ruling is going to be handed down to the state, and there'll be a man in each state that ultimately makes. There's a vote, and then there'll be men making. So get me wrong. Will it go to a public vote, or will it be the governor of that state that decides?
No, it'll be we elect our. Go ahead, Brittany.
Sorry,
go ahead,
go on. Yeah. You can go. Yeah, you can say it.
No, so basically we vote. So the way it works is we elect people to speak for us. Right? Because you can't just have willy-nilly everybody just voting. How are you going to get everybody to the voting booth on every issue? So we align ourselves with statesmen, if you will, politicians that agree with us on our views. And if that person who we elect agrees with enough of us, then they get elected, right? Because there's a numbers game there, right? So then that person is supposed to go to Congress and make the laws that we, the people, want. So in effect, the men and women, and I love the way you say, oh, it's going to be a man in every state that decides this. That was a long time ago, pal. In the United States, there are almost as many women in politics as men now, right? We have a woman for a vice president, albeit she's an idiot, but that's another subject for another day. So it's not a man who's going to decide what happens to a woman's body who's totally disconnected. We have men and women in politics, but it's the people that decide.
I'll rephrase it then.
I use this analogy, and I hate to use this analogy, but America's never been, and I hate, the liberals are going to hate me for this, but America's never been, if you get down to the nitty gritty, America has never been about right and wrong. It's about the will of the people. And if 95% of the United States decided that Italians, and especially Joe Croce, should be shipped back to Italy and we don't belong here anymore, if 90% of the people vote for that, it doesn't matter what you think. It has no bearing on anything. So if these abortion people think they have the numbers behind them, then go out and vote. Elect the people you want to do your bidding. And if you win, you win. I'll settle for the will of the people. But I doubt you have the numbers.
I want to clarify, though, that what he's addressing is in each state. Because if this ruling stands, which we don't know right now, but if this ruling stands, then that it would defer to the states. And so, yes, it would be,
It's the will of the people is it. And if the abortion
now a governor could rule, because he can make a policy in his state. But as I said, the other part of the 10th Amendment is or the people. So the people can rule that, they don't approve of what the governor has established as their policy, and they can, they can vote for a redress.
Okay, well, I made
It rarely happens, by the way. I mean, people just.
I made a verbal mistake, and I'm sure there's just as many women in politics in America as there is men. But to rephrase it, a man or a woman making a decision about somebody else's baby, I think is wrong. And I know I'm deviating, but that was my point.
Nobody's making any decisions about anybody else's baby. That is not happening at all.
But you just tell me that it's going to go to a vote. If it goes to a vote, people vote in favor of abortion. They are making a decision for somebody they don't know's unborn child, aren't they?
No, they are not. They're making a decision on a policy. What somebody does with their own child, they can choose. If they want to go to California, where I am pretty sure they will always allow abortions, at least anytime in the foreseeable future, I do not think that anybody should have any fear that they cannot get an abortion in California or New York. I think that that's something I feel pretty confident will remain. So they can go there. In fact, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have offered that they will pay for their employees to go to California to have abortions. So you're not.
If you're lucky enough to work for Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, but there's a lot of people that aren't lucky enough to work for them and live in states that are miles away.
They still have the option of going across state lines. That's what the 10th Amendment allows, that we have mobility.
So not only, so then they're going to have to go somewhere else. I just don't think it should be for other people to decide what somebody does with their own body.
Nobody's deciding what somebody does with their own body.
But this is the chains, the wheels are beginning to be set in motion, aren't they?
No,
Vinny,
they're absolutely not.
Can I jump in for a second?
What are we talking about?
I'm sorry. This is a really important point because it's the exact opposite. And this is really, I think, where they want to go with this. The exact opposite is actually what's happening. They are trying to argue that people don't have bodily autonomy. I think that is exactly what they're trying to do. They're saying they want to force abortions. That is barring bodily autonomy. So it is actually very much the opposite. People have full autonomy, but the Constitution does not dictate that it is a federal issue. So yes, it may be a little bit more inconvenient. You can't do it in the state of Tennessee. You may have to go to California. Mm-hmm. That is not somebody else deciding what you do with your body or whether or not you want to murder a child. You still, I mean, I can think it's wrong, but you will most likely have the option to go somewhere else to do that.
Okay.
And I want to respond to something Vinny said earlier. I want to play this out here. You know, you said nobody should tell a woman what she should do with her body. Who gets to decide for the baby that can't speak yet?
And it's just not her body. If you murder a pregnant woman, it's a double homicide.
Right there. That
double
pretty
homicide.
Much puts the kibosh on that argument, I think.
Not
Seriously, really. I mean, who gets to decide for the baby? You know, now we're going to get into the argument of when is a baby and not just a clump of cells. And I'm not qualified to make that argument, but seriously.
Well, and that was actually part of the draft. Part of the draft was did stipulate that scientific advancement has changed the adjudication, because we now know that life begins way earlier than one may have previously thought.
Right.
We can now
the quickening.
You can see heartbeats.
The quickening, right? They used to say the quickening.
Yeah.
When you feel a baby kicking in your stomach, that's
right.
when it's viable.
What can they see? They can see heartbeats before 10 weeks now, can they?
Right.
I believe it's 4 weeks.
Really?
You can hear the heartbeat. Yeah, 4 weeks.
I think it's 10 weeks.
Listen, the ethical and the moral question of whether it's a baby or it's human or not, I'm not touching that one tonight. That's gonna take us hours to get through that. But seriously though, who gets to make the decision on when life begins? It's not me. I'm not going to decide that. But I just think that like you have states like New York, which have literally proposed most recently within the last 6 months, that a baby can be aborted right up until the moment of birth. Come on. And these people are screaming and yelling that that's their right to do that. Come on.
According to the baby,
going to defend that? Vinny,
I just want to clarify something. So according to babycenter.com, they said that a baby's heartbeat can be detected by transvaginal ultrasound as early as 3 to 4 weeks after conception.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. I hear you.
Yep.
So
I've had very close to somebody who went for her first heartbeat scan at 8 weeks, and they couldn't find it before 8 weeks. So maybe it was.
But this is the point, that science has advanced so much that we can't use those arguments anymore. We now have quantifiable evidence.
Okay.
So that is not a valid argument. You are still entitled to whatever thoughts and feelings you may have on the matter, but that argument is no longer substantiated because science has now proven otherwise.
So just to bring everybody up to date on the current news on this topic, the House rushed it through. You know they were going to do that with those retards, but the Senate knocked it down. So they voted today to enshrine the abortion right as a federal law, and it lost. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm surprised.
It was Manchin.
The vote was 49 to 51. I'm surprised.
Manchin.
That's crazy.
Well, and I'm most surprised that it was Manchin.
Right. Yes, because he's like, he reminds me of Tulsi Gabbard, right? He's a Democrat, but he keeps
But
arguing.
He says a lot of good things. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
I wasn't expecting to. I can't hear you.
I want to say that, when I use the word Democrat and then I use the word liberal, they're not synonymous.
No,
because there are some
conservative and Republican.
Right. There are moderate, middle of the road Democrats, and I consider myself a moderate, middle of the road Republican on most issues, except for like gun control, where I'm a very conservative person. That I don't believe the government should touch my guns in any way, shape, or form, but that's an issue for another night. But I think you will find that most people in the United States are somewhere in the middle. We're not far left or far right. The far left is these communist, Antifa and BLM. That's the far left. And the far right, which I personally don't think exists anymore, is the Ku Klux Klan and the white supremacy, which President Biden says is the most existential threat to the United States. I find that to be ridiculous. That's ridiculous. When was the last time, Courtney, you bumped into a white supremacist walking down the street or had a conversation with someone that said, all black people, we should send them back to Africa, or some ridiculous white supremacist statement? I haven't met anybody like that in my life, really. I guess maybe I live a sheltered life, and it's this huge problem that I have no bearing on.
They exist, but crazy people
they exist
on all sides of the spectrum.
They exist in about the same numbers as BLM or Antifa exists.
No. BLM and Antifa are much larger, actually.
Okay, I said if not less. So I don't see this white supremacy issue that they're talking about. So again, I think most people are in the middle, right? Because I'm not against, a real ultra right-wing conservative would be against smoking pot. I have no issue with the kids smoking pot these days. Let them smoke weed. They're not hurting anybody. But an ultra conservative would say, oh, no, it's a gateway drug. And
I think you're confusing policy with values and philosophy.
By all means, straighten me out.
Because, I don't know that I don't know that necessarily a right wing, because I think policy tends to change. So you're saying that somebody who is super far right would say that it should be illegal to have marijuana? Is that what you're arguing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't necessarily know that would be accurate, because I don't know that that's in. So again, I think that would fall within the states' rights. I don't think that would fall. Any real conservative is not going to say that that's a federal issue. There's no place in the Constitution that says you can't smoke marijuana. So, but
it's not a right. It's not guaranteed in the Constitution.
It's not guaranteed, but it's not mentioned in the Constitution, and therefore it would be a state's issue. It would not be within the purview of the federal government to legislate upon it. So anyone who's a true conservative is not going to argue for the federal government to legislate on it. That's just
right. So, I did have an opinion on that particular subject. In the Constitution, it says among these rights, right? Right. Among these rights, or is that the Declaration of Independence? Forgive me. Among these rights.
Declaration of Independence is very different than the Constitution.
Right. Among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Among these rights. That's not all inclusive, meaning we're going to state them here, but this is not all of them. And I take that, my interpretation is that everything is a right. Everything is given to you by God. You have rights to do anything you want, so long as it doesn't break the laws that we have stated here. How about that one?
wait,
Why
but
isn't that a rule?
I do want to make a distinction here, because we shouldn't conflate the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They're very different. So
Yes,
they're
I know.
two very, very different documents.
My
And
deepest apologies. I didn't mean to do that.
it's okay. I mean, they're both very, very important, but they are very separate and they serve very different purposes. So I think it's important not to conflate the two. And they've made very specific distinctions in each of them. For instance, on religion is one that's very, very clear. The Declaration of Independence mentions God and references God several times. And that is largely in part because our founders fled religious persecution. And so part of declaring their independence was, they wanted to be able to have the right to establish and to believe and practice their whatever faith they subscribe to. But the Constitution, when they set up, because the Constitution is a governing document, where the Declaration of Independence is a declaration of the separation of the United States of America from Great Britain. So they're very different things. But the governing document now does not mention God, because they really did want to have that separation. They wanted people to be, they didn't want really it was because they didn't want a theocracy. They saw what the Vatican did. They saw what the Church of England. They saw all of these different religious institutions and how they amassed so much power, and they did not want to repeat that. So
we've seen the effects of a theocracy where they burned witches in Salem and stuff, where people take it too far. Vinny, I want to ask you a question.
Hello.
Quickly. We're just starting out here. How does the rest of the world, because we have a unique perspective tonight to see something we don't get to see often. What does the rest of the world think of all this crap that's going on in this country?
I don't know that you can speak to the rest of the world, but what is your
how about England? For you've just come freshly from Great Britain and the UK, and what do you think? And what do your friends, your mates, as you call them, what do you folks see when you see us? At least from the English perspective.
Okay, well, I'm here, so maybe I've got a different perspective. I've spoken to Americans, but generally, the image that people have in Europe of Americans is the problem most people have is with your military spending and I'm not sure of the correct name for it, but it's what's the name for it? It's like the whole Bush thing after 9/11. I know this is a very sore topic and I don't want to offend anybody, but the whole setting up of businesses in foreign countries and stuff like that, it's the desire to influence the world, dominate the world. There's that factor, yeah. There's also the factor of your whole problem with oil, your whole problem with what Biden's done to your oil, to the price of your oil, okay? Again, I'm just presenting what people think of you. Not everybody, but what sort of swayed in on you. Okay.
So talk to me. Tell me though. You mentioned the topic, but not the. So you said what Biden's done to the price of your oil. What do your people think about that?
I feel like if I was to have $1 for everybody that complained about the price of oil. Now, when Biden's in, and the people that told me how much better it was when Trump was in, do you know, it's funny, but somebody said this to me the other day, and I researched it just before I came on the show. Water is cheaper than what you call gas over here. We call it petrol, which is it's ridiculous. It's like you all just drive about in these massive trucks. And I understand that for industry, for construction industry and that, you need trucks of a certain size. But I should imagine, and this is just, it's just the way it is in this country. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the culture you live in. But your footprint, your carbon footprint must be absolutely massive. And I think people, whether it's a form of jealousy, people have get not offended, but get upset about your mass consumerism and your desire to dominate the world. I know that's going to make me very unpopular, but that is the view that a lot of people have.
What's fascinating is you've conflated a lot of things. So yeah, that it's actually, I actually find it really fascinating. So I agree with you. The price of oil has skyrocketed under Biden and completely unnecessarily so, but not.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I feel that, right, the price, why he has done that, why Biden has done that, is because, like the rest of the world, you need to start driving smaller cars.
This is where I find this so fascinating to me. I knew that's where you were going. That is not at all why. That is not at all why. But I think it's really fascinating.
Why then? Why? Tell me, please. And I'm not being facetious.
We're no longer energy independent, and so therefore our oil prices are rising because we are not, we don't have the independence. So, but what's really fascinating is you're believing the lie of the Club of Rome. So, first of all, carbon is not the enemy. Carbon is literally, and this is just mind-boggling to me because anybody who's taken 5th grade science knows that carbon is literally the life molecule. Carbon is what makes everything green, right? We expel carbon, right? And then that's what the plants breathe, and that's how they grow. And then they, in return, give us oxygen. It's the cycle of life. So this lie that carbon is the enemy, it is a big, massive, massive lie. And it is actually really mind-boggling.
You do believe that the stuff that comes out of the back of cars is harmful to the environment, don't you?
It's not harmful to the environment. Most of those things have been completely fabricated. Carbon is not made.
You know what?
I was telling to a friend today,
I'm going to just give you a really quick synopsis.
Okay.
This is where it comes from. It comes from the Club of Rome. They did a document back in 1971. It was called The Limits to Growth. And what they were trying to do was create a depopulation agenda. And they were trying to propagate this agenda. And so they couldn't figure out, and they actually admit this, they could not figure out how to get people to believe this big lie, the propaganda they were selling. And so what they came up with, and they say this, they flat out admit it, they say that they need a common enemy for people to rally around. And they decided the enemy of humanity was man. That's literally what they said. That was the enemy that they came up with. And of course, what does man expel is carbon. And so they've created this entire propaganda machine that is still going today. And that is what, and it really is all about, it's a Malthusian philosophy that we have limited resources and therefore we need to decrease the population of Earth, which is a complete fallacy because we do not have limited resources. What we have is overpopulation in cities, and that is by design. And it is by design intentionally, one, to create this illusion of overpopulation so that people buy this lie, but it's also so they can track, stack, and pack people and create these smart cities, because that is part of the Agenda 2130 plan, is to create all of these smart cities where they can do beta testing and tracking on people.
So
somebody just said, we're the carbon they want to reduce. That's exactly right. We're the carbon they want to reduce. That is right.
So you don't believe that what comes out of the back of cars is damaging the environment? Is that what?
Not that much. Not really that much.
It's not the carbon. I will tell you this. It's not the carbon. And if you were really that concerned, first of all, the electric cars are definitely not better for the environment. Where do those batteries go? And they use just as much fossil fuels. So that's another huge lie. If they were,
why don't you use wind farms like we do in Britain?
How are you going to run your car on a wind farm?
The wind farms are.
That's where you get the electricity from, Joe.
Yeah,
don't get started on the wind farms. Without burning more coal. They're devastating for the animals.
Can I just say one point?
I just want to say one thing really quickly, and then I'll let you speak.
Okay.
When if they were really so concerned about the energy for cars, they wouldn't have gotten rid of water-powered cars, which they did.
Did you think it might have been the oil people that got rid of the water-powered cars, maybe?
Of course it was. So this is what I'm saying to you. It's very interesting because you conflated a lot of things. So I just think you're a little bit misinformed on you've got some of the pieces right. Some of it is actually very accurate. And
can I just have 2 minutes?
Why
Okay, can I just have 2 minutes? Right. Would you associate Britain with sandstorms?
With what?
Sandstorms.
Sandstorms?
Sandstorms. Like you get in the desert.
Oh, sandstorms. Okay.
A sandstorm. You wouldn't associate Britain with it, would you?
Not parts of.
No. Yeah. Okay. Like at various points, multiple points in the last 5 years, we've had sand falling on our cars, falling from the Sahara Desert. You know how big the Sahara Desert is getting? And that's because we're damaging our environment. And the most of it is coming.
You know what's damaging the environment is the chemtrails and the geoengineering. That's what's causing it.
The what?
The chemtrails and the geoengineering.
Oh,
so a huge part of, and a lot of it is going on in the UK, actually. A lot of it. So a huge part of when you talk, so this is again why it's so fascinating to me, because when you talk about like our military spending, you're right, but we do that a lot largely in partnership with the British intelligence and with the British military system. And part of what the Vietnam War, when you look at a lot of their research, most of what they were doing back then was doing geoengineering, which is weather manipulation. But through weather manipulation, they release a lot of toxins into the air. And that does cause, it's very detrimental to the environment. It is very detrimental to humans, to all life forms.
So you don't believe in that whole thing that when the airlines fly, not that whole conspiracy theory.
It's not. It's actually not. It's a conspiracy fact, and I can prove it to you. There are documents. So in the United States, there are congressional bills. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, with our system and how that works, but we have geoengineering bills. They're in our congressional bills. So if they don't exist, and chemtrails are under there, I've read these documents. So that's just it. Like when you start to read these documents, it's not a theory. I mean, it's not a theory if they lay it out. And
so just so I fully understand you, explain to me the thing about chemtrails and planes, please.
Okay, so
what they're doing.
I'm not going to go into all the science behind it.
Okay, just for stupid Englishmen.
When you look at a plane and how it typically streaks, right, as it goes across, that's called a contrail, and that's short for condensation. Because what happens, they tend to evaporate very quickly, right? You have a little white line that goes and then it disappears. Now, when you see the planes go and they streak and it stays there, and it doesn't go away, that's a chemtrail. And
I must be misinformed because I thought it was to do with pressure, air pressure, and different,
No,
pressure.
that's condensation. Then that's when it disappears.
Right.
Those are contrails. Chemtrails are different. They stay in the air. And it has to do with what's being released. A lot of metals are being released into the air, and a lot of other toxins as well. But
why are they doing that?
So what they tell us, the powers that be, what they tell us in their papers is that it is for geoengineering, that they're doing it to dim the sun's rays and to affect the weather, whether to create rain, that's what they say the purpose is, that it is for weather manipulation. So now I have theories, and they're just theories.
Is it
other reasons? What
is it? The petroleum, the air fuel companies that put it into the tank and then it comes out of the plane? I mean, who puts it in there? How does it get there?
What do you mean? How does it get there?
The metals and stuff like that you're talking about.
Right. So they legislate on this for geoengineering, and then I don't know who the person that's actually putting it in there.
Okay. All right. But thank you for explaining it to me, Courtney.
Hold on, guys. I got a Vinny. Here's the thing. So you asked Courtney a question, if she thought the stuff coming out of the back of the cars was ruining the environment, and she said no, that's a big lie.
Yeah,
I can confirm.
Well,
that.
I would say it's not the carbon that would be. I would clarify. It's not the carbon that's causing it.
And are you going to give me the whole Mount St. Helens thing?
Yes, I'm going to bring up the Mount St. Helens thing. Thank you for bringing it up. So Mount St. Helens, everybody knows, was a volcano that erupted a few years ago here in the United States, but it's not the only one. There are hundreds of active volcanoes around the planet, but we'll just take this one for consideration. When Mount St. Helens erupted, it emitted more carbon emissions and carbon dioxide and all the other nasty chemicals that you guys like to talk about. It emitted more in the 5 days of that eruption than the entire human history of the 500 years we've been burning fossil fuels in 5 days. And the planet recovered like that. Mount St. Helens smoke and ash was felt in Europe. And it's gone now. The planet heals itself and recovers far better than anybody gives it credit for. I don't agree with the plastic in the ocean. We could have a whole show about that. There's a raft floating in the ocean of plastic bottles and garbage that's the size of Texas or bigger, but not the air, the trees, the jungles, and the ocean. The massive 70% of the planet is covered by ocean, constantly filters the air. And if it can filter the air from hundreds of volcanoes, when I just told you, and this is a scientific fact, look it up, Mount St. Helens spewed more toxins into the air than all of human history combined.
Yep.
In 5 days. And we're not all dead yet.
Imagine that.
I don't want to hear about the stuff coming out of my tailpipe. And cars are getting cleaner and cleaner every year.
They are.
So
they are.
Prove to me otherwise, and they can't. Oh, they could say, oh, these guys take ice samples from Antarctica and say, you know what? In the last, 100,000 years, this is the warmest by a degree, literally, like by a degree and a half. Meanwhile, they're totally discounting the 65 or 150 million years of the dinosaurs when the planet was completely covered by a greenhouse. The temperatures were 80 degrees in Antarctica, and the whole planet was water. There was hardly any land. The United States was split by an ocean. On my mountain, at the top of my mountain here, which is thousands of feet above sea level, there are seashells in my rocks up on the top of my mountain. I could show them to you next show. So the planet has been covered with carbon dioxide and a total greenhouse millions of years. And
carbon dioxide is what makes things grow. It's the life molecule, literally. They were trying to figure out
50,000 years from now, we'll have an ice age and everything will freeze over, and then they'll change all their theories.
Well, they keep trying to figure out how to, export life onto Mars. And they determined that if they had a massive injection of CO2, they could do it.
I'm just saying, these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about. In 2 years from now, there'll be a whole
So I disagree. They know exactly what they're talking about. They are spreading lies. This is called propaganda. These scientists know exactly. I don't know that all the scientists do, but the people behind these machines do.
All I know is, Courtney, you're doing the next round of sponsors. I'm not doing it.
Oh, okay.
You can read the screen instead of me next time.
All right. What sponsors do we have?
But I wanted to thank Vinny for coming on tonight. And
it's been a pleasure. Thank you all.
But we're having a good time here, and I can't. You know what? I actually got to give Vinny Parco credit for doing the show, because he's a lot calmer than me. And I got a little bit nervous having to do this whole thing where I have to make sure.
You did great.
Yeah, no, I'm not used to it, but we're okay. We're all right. We're having fun.
Yeah.
Courtney, you're brilliant as always.
Thank you.
But so our producer is telling us wrap it up. I'm
wrap
saying,
it up.
Okay, well,
I don't know what the sponsors
so Courtney can read them. But all right, we're doing good. Everybody have a good night, I guess, and God bless. He says, don't worry, I'll bring on the sponsors.
He's going to add them. That's good.
Whatever.
All right, good.
So
awesome. Well, thank you very much.
We have to do another show with this liberal. He's great.
Well, it was so interesting, the points on like the oil, the gas prices, and then the military industrial complex, but then he conflated all the things because he was believing all the propaganda. It's like, wait,
Well, it's just-
you're
yeah,
right.
just
You're right on the
repeating
issue,
the
but wrong on the
nonsense.
why.
Repeating the nonsense. Go ahead, Courtney, do the sponsors so we can go home.
Oh, so this is our Cruso's pastry on 670 East 187th Street in the Bronx. And I'm sure they are awesome for Borgatti's ravioli and egg noodles. Yeah, Vinny was talking about how awesome they were last week. He loves that place.
We'll have to pay a visit to him. Anyway, good night, everybody. Love you. See you next week.
Good night.